they weren't supposed to, and plot what? Revolts to try to secure their freedom. So the 4 ways that slaves began to protest or fight back against their masters. 1, they purposely slowed down their work or performed their work duties poorly. 2, they ran away. 3, they violently struck back at their masters, sometimes even killing them. And 4, they would arrange to get together, although they weren't supposed to, and plot uprisings or revolts to try to gain their freedom. Now, what do you think let's just talk about these uprisings. What do you think would happen if they were caught plotting an uprising? Hung or burned to death. That was a major crime. So that was risky. If you got together and tried to plan an uprising, you were hung or you were burned to death. What if you fought violently back against your master? Major crime. Major crime. Hung or burned to death. If you ran away, they'd beat the hell out of you, split your nose, cut off your ears, whatever, and then make you go back to work. Okay? If you slowed down your work and didn't perform, what might they do to you? Same thing. They might beat you, they might cut off one of your ears, who knows? So it was pretty tough duty. Now this is kind of interesting. In 1741, 100 slaves plotted a revolt for their freedom. They were stopped by colonists, and it resulted in the following. 100 slaves. This was in 1741. A group of 100 slaves had a plot to try to gain their freedom. Of those 100 slaves, 18 were hung. I guess hanged is the right term. 18 of those 100 were hanged. 13 were burned to death. How many does that leave? 36. We got 31 so far. How many does that leave?
69.
Okay, now those 69, they were not hung or burned to death. They transferred them to the British West Indies, and they were re-seasoned, so to speak. And what was the percentage of those that came out alive? 50%. So, 18 were hanged, 13 were burned to death. The remaining 69 were transported back to the West Indies, where they were again seasoned. And once they were seasoned, the ones that survived that ended up where? Back in the Americas somewhere as slaves. Now that's interesting. We're going to take you to another subtopic, which is the first time we have white opposition to slavery. White opposition to slavery. So not only, there were white people that didn't like slavery either. White opposition to slavery. White opposition to slavery. Now, let's just think about this from our history books. Where are the people going to be from that are against slavery? Yeah, absolutely. They're going to be from the north. Thank you. Okay, because the southern plantation owners are loving it, right? So, these people, during this time, there were a few white colonists that condemned slavery, obviously from the north. I'm going to give you 3 examples. Okay, first one happened in 1700. A man by the name of Samuel Sewall of Boston was the first to speak out against slavery. He was a very influential judge in Boston. So our first example of white colonists condemning slavery happened in 1700. A fellow by the name of Sam Sewall of Boston, who was an influential judge, published a famous anti-slavery pamphlet called The Selling of Joseph. So the first example of white colonists condemning slavery occurred in 1700 when Samuel Sewall of Boston, who was an influential judge, published a famous anti-slavery pamphlet entitled The Selling of Joseph. Now he was a Puritan. So where did he gather his examples from to show that slavery was evil? The Bible, thank you. So Samuel Sewall was a devout Puritan, Judge Sewall. So he gathered his examples about the evils of slavery from the Bible. So his pamphlet was filled with Christian views and biblical examples of why slavery was evil. So So he was the first to speak out. Number two, which group of people that we've talked about might denounce the evils of owning and selling human beings as property? Not the Puritans, as we talked. Thank you, the Quakers. You guys are awesome. The Quakers stood up and they denounced the evils of owning and selling human beings as property. And they had one specific reason why they thought it was bad. And I want you to think about that. I'll repeat that though. The Quakers denounced the evils of owning and selling human beings as property. What bothered them the most about slavery, you think? They were bothered by the whole thing. But what specific thing did they really condemn when slavery came about? The whole concept of it.
It was inhumane.
Why though? That you're right, but there was a specific part that they thought was inhumane that they didn't like about slavery. Anybody want to guess? You guys have really done awesome here. What do you think, Anna? What bothers you maybe personally about the thought of this?
The way that advice.
What's that?
Like the way they're treated.
Okay, what'd you say, Taylor?
With the good advice.
Maybe, but think a little bit more sentimental than that. Some more sentimental.
But they're human. Oh, they don't have religion.
They're human, what'd you say? Okay, they're still humans. But what happens when they get rounded up and brought over to America? What? They lose their families. That's what the Quakers were most upset about. You were separating husbands from wives, children from their fathers. That was the thing that bothered the Quakers more than anything. Very good, Kylie. They condemned the separations of husbands from their wives and fathers from their children. And they were very outspoken about the slave trade. They just thought slavery and the slave trade was the most awful thing you could ever imagine. And they preached that in their religious beliefs. So the Quakers were huge opponents of slavery. That's the second example. Now the third example is one specific Quaker by the name of John Woolman. One specific Quaker by the name of John Woolman. He was a Quaker tailor. So, how about Taylor, since we're using Taylor, how about if you look up the definition of tailor in your dictionary? Okay, so John Woolman, who spoke out specifically against slavery, was a Quaker tailor. T-A-I-L-O-R. See if you know. If you know what it is, just kind of keep see if you know.
One who makes and alter or alters garments.
One who makes or alters garments. So a tailor is someone who either makes clothes or they alter them. You know, take them up, hem them up, whatever. Tailor. So, John Woolman was a Quaker tailor, one who makes or alters garments. And in 1872, he wrote journals. What are journals? 1770.
Civil War's over. 1,000 years. Civil War's over.
No, that's not, no, I'm right, 1872. No, let me see.
No.
Just a second.
Well, you see, sir.
Just a
Civil War's
second.
over by then.
1872.
1997.
There's no way. Are you sure?
No, 1782.
What?
Ah.
Which is it?
1782, bro.
1782? Yeah. that one.
82 or
Okay.
What number is it? That would
Okay,
make sense.
just, no, let me tell you what it is, because I got myself confused.
Oh.
Sometimes I do that. Same period of time, 1760s.
What?
1760s.
No.
He wrote these journals. I'm going to get to the point I screwed up. In the 1760s, a Quaker tailor by the name of John Woolman wrote journals. And they were entitled The Journals of John Woolman. And the whole journals condemned slavery. I'm going to get to my point. I screwed up totally here. My apologies. So in the 1760s, a Quaker tailor by the name of John Woolman wrote journals that were entitled The Journals of John Woolman, and they condemned slavery in the colonies. And what he did during this time, Woolman, is he journeyed through the colonies and he tried to persuade people to free their slaves and educate them. He went all the way through the colonies and said to slave owners, come on, free your slaves and educate them. This is a bad deal. And he wrote these in his journals. He kept this, I'm kind of mixing myself up. So he did this traveling around, right? Trying to convince people to free their slaves and do what? Educate them. And during this time he was traveling around, what did he do? He wrote these journals, okay, about his experiences of going all the way around and trying to get people to free their slaves and educate them. Well, these journals became so popular that in 1872 they were published into a book entitled John Woolman Journals. This is a first edition, first copy in 1872. So they took these journals that he put together after the Civil War, when we had fought over slavery, and these became very popular readings and were published in 1872. We probably should have listened to him a little bit more before they published these, do you think? Because they became a popular reading in 1872. So if you look at this book, it even smells old. First edition, first printing in 1872 from Boston. But what they are, they're copies of the journals that he wrote in the 1760s. Does that make sense? Now I have you totally confused. Okay? But I think you get the point. So it didn't happen in 1872. It became a book in 1872. If you want to kind of look at that, you can pass it around. It's an old book worth more than your life.
Oh, it is.
Okay, any questions on white opposition to slavery? Okay, that'll take us to another subtopic here, which is free blacks, separate but unequal. So we're going to talk about free blacks, not slaves, ones that gained their freedom. Free blacks, separate and unequal. Now, not all the free blacks were living in the southern colonies or northern colonies. There were a few free blacks that lived in each of the American colonies. All 13 colonies had some free blacks that had gained their freedom. So it wasn't to any specific area. They actually were found in all 13. There was 4 ways a black could gain their freedom. 4 ways. Now you already talked about one. What was that? They got freed by their owners. Usually they freed them for 2 reasons. Why? Why would they free? Oh, we're going to get to that one, but that's a good one. Now you keep that. Why would they free a non-old? That is awesome. Why would they free a young slave? Good point. Why would they free him? No, they were good, because if he wasn't good, what would he have done? Beat the hell out of him or hung him, probably. What? No, nothing bad. As a
They got hurt.
no,
Sacrifice.
perfect shape. As a reward. Okay, maybe they were working really hard, and as a result of that, the guy said, you know, I got plenty of slaves here. You know, Ben here has been working for me for 5 years, just been a great slave, so to speak. Never caused me any troubles. Work like crazy. You know what, Ben? I got plenty of help. You deserve to be off this plantation. They also loyalty. If a slave was loyal. Now these slaves, you think about it. If you have somebody in prison, we'll go back to prison motif. If you have a prisoner that has great behavior, what happens to them lots of times? They get released for good behavior. Same thing with these slaves. These slave owners would reward them for their good efforts by either letting them go as a reward or because of their loyalty. Now we're going to get back to McGarvin over here because she's all over it. Some slaves were freed because why, Shania? They were old, and what was the slave owner going to have to do? Put them down. Come on, man. You're going to have to take care of them. They're going to have to take care of them.
Really?
This is why you girls never should get a boyfriend. Right? Here's 4 examples of why you should never get a boyfriend. Anyway, shh, get on task here. Okay? They were getting older. They had some conscience, and so they didn't want to have to take care of them in their old age, so they let them go. Okay, very good. How else might you get freed?
Wait, is this number 3 or I'm really lost?
With 1, we had is they're freed by their owners as either a reward or loyalty.
Okay.
And 2 was they were freed because the owner's concerned they'd have to care for them in their old age.
I thought
Yeah, see?
reward and
That's the other
loyalty
one.
were different.
No, same one. Freed by their owners is either a reward for their or for their loyalty, which is really the same thing. And the second one is they're freed because their owners were concerned that they'd have to care for them in their old age. What might be another way you could get free? No, that would be, no, I'm talking about somebody guaranteeing freedom. Let them go. Some inherited their freedom from descendants who had earned their freedom. Okay? I'll give you an example of that. Now this is pretty risky at this time. So some inherited their freedom from descendants who had earned their freedom. Now, do you ever think that possibly slaves got together with some of these plantation owners' girls?
Yeah.
Happened. If you were born to a white mother, no matter the father's race, you were free. So if we had an interracial issue here, it wouldn't be a marriage, but if a white woman had a half-black child, being that child was born to a white woman, they were free. Now, if a child was born to a black woman with a white man, which don't think that didn't happen also, was that child free? No. So if you were born to a white woman, you were automatically free. Okay, and in some cases you could tell a mixed breed person, in some cases you couldn't, just just depends on how it goes. So, but you could certainly, in most instances, when those freed half-breeds, so to speak, left, you could tell that's what they were, probably. Could you not tell that? Okay, all right. But my point is, blacks had inherited their freedom from descendants. So any child who had a white mother was free. Yeah.
So what if like a slave just like snuck in the house and impregnated like the white lady, the free kid instantly?
The kid would be free. That's correct. That's what I'm saying. And that happened. You had instances in where slaves would have relationship with white women, and that, I don't know whatever happened. Yeah, good point. I'm sure when the white fellow found out that there wasn't much for the slave, but the child was considered free if they came from a white woman. If a child came from a black woman and a white man, not so. Okay? And the fourth one is actually some plantation owners let slaves do what? Earn money. Some plantation owners, and it goes back to, this wasn't a negative thing, it was negative in general, but there were some plantation owners who had good relationships with their slaves, even though they were slaves, right? And some of them even paid them a little bit for their work. And so they saved up their money, and how did they become free? Paid the plantation owner for their freedom. So those were the 4 ways that a slave could become free. They inherited their freedom from descendants who had earned their freedom. The example, children of a white mother were always free. Some slaves were freed by their owners as either a reward for their loyalty or just their loyalty in general. Some slaves were freed because of the owner's concern they'd have to care for them when they got older. And some slaves actually bought their freedom using savings that their owners allowed them to earn and keep. Now, I just want to say this as we end today. No matter how a slave was set free, no matter what the circumstances, they were always considered a class apart from whites. They never were given the same opportunities, even though they were free. And we'll tell you what these freed blacks actually did once they were freed tomorrow. Okay? And then we're going to have a reading assignment tomorrow also. So here's what you're missing tomorrow. We're going to lecture for about 10 minutes, and I'm going to give you a reading assignment, and we're going to have a quiz on the reading assignment at the end of the period. So if you're not here tomorrow, that means you'll take that reading assignment Friday when you're back. How many of you are going to be gone Friday?
Yeah, we do.
What's tomorrow?
Wednesday.
Tomorrow's only Wednesday.
Tomorrow's Sunday.
Okay, quiz will be tomorrow. Those of you who aren't here will take it
I'll still be gone for
I'll tell you what I'll do. Hey, this is the way to go. Do not leave. Nobody leave if the bell rings.
I'll be gone Wednesday.
Do not leave. Here's your reading assignment. Let's just put it to you this way. We're going to have the quiz on the reading assignment tomorrow. If you're here, you'll take it Thursday during orange period. If you're not, here tomorrow. Now, Megan is going to be gone Wednesday and Thursday.
Okay.
I'll take it.
Who's- Okay, well, good. Well, let's make it work. You guys read this. Get this taken before you leave for the weekend somehow. I actually will be, hey, I'll actually be tutoring until 5:30 tomorrow night. So if you're not going to be able to take this quiz on time, you can come take it tomorrow night. And here's the rule. Hey, if anybody leaves for the weekend and they have not taken this quiz, guess what you're getting on it? Thank you very much. So if you're going to be gone, I'll tell you what, let's make this kind of fun. Anybody in here that wants to get it out of the way, if they miss it tomorrow, can take it after school Wednesday or orange period Thursday, right? You're going to be here Wednesday?
I'll be here, but I won't be.
You'll be here, but you'll be in band, but you'll be back from band by after school. You can take it after school Wednesday or orange period Thursday. Anybody else in the same book as Molitor here? Okay, maybe. Just make sure you take it before you go on Thursday for the weekend. And I'm telling you, I'm out of here quick because I'm going to see my granddaughters.